Welcome to Empires Historical, where the stories of ancient civilizations echo across time. Before we dive into the mysteries that shaped the ancient world, let me ask you, have you ever wondered about the ancient gods, the ones who shaped human destiny long before the rise of mighty empires? This is a tale that stretches across millennia, a tale of gods who held the world in their hands and turned it to their will. A tale of the Anunnaki, the gods whose very name reverberates with divine authority. Their rise, their fall, and the lingering shadows they left behind whisper secrets to those brave enough to seek them. But behind their divine power and influence lies a darker truth, a story of grandeur and demise that leaves us with questions no civilization can fully answer. In the beginning, they were the architects of civilization itself. The Anunnaki, the mighty deities of Mesopotamian lore, were not mere mythological figures. They were the bloodline of kings and the heart of empires. They were the ones who shaped the cosmos, dictating the rise and fall of kings, the ebb and flow of time, and the creation of humanity itself. From their celestial thrones, they wielded power that few could comprehend, much less challenge. But how did they rise to such unimaginable heights? How did these gods, these titans of ancient times, shape the world with a mere thought? And more hauntingly, how did they fall? Their names now reduced to whispers in the dust, their grandeur lost in the ruins of time. To understand the Anunnaki is to understand the very essence of human civilization. The thirst for power, the will to conquer, and the inevitable collapse that comes with all things touched by greatness. It is a story that mirrors the rise and fall of every empire that has ever existed. It is the story of a people who once ruled with the strength of the stars, only to find their glory consumed by the very forces they sought to control. Let me take you back to a time when the world was young and the gods walked among men. The Anunnaki were not merely figures of divine power, they were the foundation of civilization itself. Their influence stretched far beyond the realm of the divine. They were the architects of laws, the builders of cities, and the creators of knowledge. The gods themselves bestowed upon humanity the gift of wisdom, teaching the arts of writing, mathematics, and astronomy. They were the hands that shaped empires, and their gaze held the power to shape the fates of kings and commoners alike. Under their guidance, the great city-states of Mesopotamia flourished. From Uruk to Babylon, their influence stretched across the land, creating a world where human beings bowed not just to kings, but to gods who ruled from the heavens above. The gods were present in every corner of life, within the walls of temples, the halls of power, and the very foundations of society. They were everywhere. But, as with all things of great power, the Anunnaki too faced their downfall. The gods who had once ruled with unchallenged might began to wither. Their temples fell into disrepair. Their names were no longer invoked with reverence, but whispered in fear, their influence diminishing as new empires rose to replace them. The gods who had once held the universe in their grasp were now forgotten, their stories scattered in the winds of time, their temples buried under layers of earth and history. It was not just a physical fall, but a spiritual one as well. The grandeur of the Anunnaki was swept away by the tides of time, replaced by new gods, new myths, and new ways of understanding the world. Their temples lay in ruins, their knowledge scattered to the four corners of the earth. Yet, even as their power waned, the legacy of the Anunnaki lived on in the hearts and minds of those who followed them. The story of the Anunnaki is a mirror to the rise and fall of all civilizations. From their humble beginnings to their apex, they stand as a testament to the fragility of power. Their once glorious empire, built on divine authority, crumbled as the weight of time bore down upon them. In the end, the very forces they sought to control, pride, greed, and hubris, became the instruments of their downfall. And yet, even in their fall, there is a strange beauty, for it is in the ashes of their destruction that we find the remnants of their greatness. Their story is not just a tale of gods, but a reflection of humanity's own journey through the ages. It is the story of creation, destruction, and rebirth, of a civilization that rose to unimaginable heights, only to be consumed by the very ambition that fueled it. The Anunnaki are gone, their temples lost to the winds of time, but their influence lingers, a shadow cast upon the world. Their story is one of triumph and tragedy, of gods who shaped the world and were ultimately undone by the very forces they sought to control. Their fall serves as a reminder that no empire, no matter how great, is immune to the ravages of time and the inherent flaws of power. So what can we learn from the rise and fall of the Anunnaki? Perhaps it is the humbling truth that no matter how powerful we become, no matter how high we rise, there will always be a reckoning, a moment when the world bends to forces beyond our control. The Anunnaki, like all those who have come before and after, were subject to the same fate that awaits us all. Their story, though ancient, holds a mirror to our own. As you ponder the fate of the Anunnaki, ask yourself, what will be our legacy? What will be the empire that we build? And will it, too, crumble into the dust, lost to time's endless march? If you find yourself captivated by the story of the Anunnaki and their influence on the world, I invite you to subscribe to Empires Historical. Your support will help us continue to uncover the forgotten stories of the past, stories that shape our understanding of the present and the future. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to bringing you more tales from the ancient world. As we look at the rise and fall of the Anunnaki, we come face to face with a profound truth. The forces that govern the cosmos, that shape the course of empires, are not always in the hands of those who claim to control them. The Anunnaki, for all their grandeur and power, were mere players in a much larger drama. A drama where time itself is both the creator and destroyer of all things. There is a sense of tragic irony in their story, for while they built civilizations that reached the very heavens, they were also undone by the very ambition and arrogance that fueled their ascent. In their attempt to impose divine order, they overlooked the fragile nature of their own existence. Their eventual decline was not only a result of external forces, conquests, revolutions, or invasions, but a reflection of an internal, spiritual unraveling. The gods, despite their immortality, were not immune to the wear and tear of time. The very monuments they constructed to immortalize their reigns began to crumble as the ages passed. The ink that once marked their divine wisdom was eroded by the winds of change. Is it not the nature of all empires, gods, or men to grow so vast, so powerful, that they forget the delicate balance that sustains them? The Anunnaki were no different. They sought to impose order, to shape the world to their vision. But in doing so, they disrupted the natural flow of things, turning their own creations into their prisons. As their power reached its zenith, their vision became clouded, and with it came their downfall. In the end, the temples of the Anunnaki lay in ruins, their once glorious cities forgotten, their names consigned to the shadows. Yet, as history so often teaches us, there is a strange beauty in destruction. For it is in the collapse of the old that the seeds for the new are sown. The fall of the Anunnaki is not simply a tale of loss, but a reminder that nothing in this world is permanent. It serves as a warning to all those who seek to wield power, be it in the form of a divine will, a political dynasty, or even a personal ambition, that the very forces they seek to control will, in the end, slip through their fingers. But the story of the Anunnaki is far from over. Their legacy, though buried in the dust of time, has not been lost. It continues to echo across the corridors of history, through the myths and legends that survive their fall. Even as their civilization crumbled, the lessons they imparted lived on in the societies that followed. Their influence seeped into the foundations of later empires, shaping the way future generations viewed the cosmos, power, and divinity. The very architecture they left behind, the cuneiform tablets, the stories of gods who shaped the heavens, became the building blocks for the next era of human civilization. In the absence of their physical presence, the Anunnaki were reborn in the minds of those who sought to understand their world. Their mythologies were reinterpreted, adapted to fit the new realities of the time, yet their essence endured. From the ancient Mesopotamians to the Greeks and Romans, the Anunnaki's influence permeated every corner of the ancient world. Even the rise of monotheism, which displaced the polytheistic pantheons of old, did not completely erase their presence. Instead, their names were transformed, their roles redefined, but their stories continued to shape the theological landscape of the ancient world. One could argue that the Anunnaki were not truly lost. They merely changed form, adapted to the evolving needs of those who followed them. Their mythology was not simply a religious system. It was a mirror, reflecting humanity's deepest fears, desires, and aspirations. The gods who had once walked among men were now part of the collective human psyche, guiding the lives of people in ways both seen and unseen. They became symbols of power, wisdom, and even corruption, serving as both a warning and a source of inspiration. As we look at the ruins of their temples and the faded inscriptions on their tablets, we are reminded of the cyclical nature of time. Empires rise and they fall. Kings are crowned and they are forgotten. And yet, in the midst of this eternal cycle, there is something enduring, something that transcends the temporal and the material. It is the idea that what we build, for all its grandeur, is not for us alone. It is for those who come after us, who will learn from our triumphs and our mistakes. The Anunnaki, in their grandiosity, sought to shape the world, but in the end, they too were shaped by it. Their story, like all great myths, carries within it a lesson that resonates across generations, that no matter how high we climb, no matter how powerful we become, there is always a greater force at work, one that cannot be controlled, only understood. And perhaps, in understanding it, we can learn to navigate the rise and fall of our own civilizations, whether those of the gods or of men. As we continue to explore the mysteries of the ancient world, let us keep in mind the lessons of the Anunnaki. Their rise and fall are not merely the story of gods, but the story of us all. It is a story that reflects our own struggles for power, for understanding, and for meaning in a world that often seems beyond our grasp. And though the Anunnaki may be gone, their legacy endures, not in the ruins of their cities, but in the minds of those who continue to ask the age-old questions: who are we? What is our place in the universe? And what will become of us when our time, too, has passed? In the end, the rise and fall of the Anunnaki is not a story of defeat, but a tale of transformation, a reminder that even in destruction, there is rebirth. For every empire that falls, every god that fades, there is always a new story waiting to be told, a new civilization waiting to rise. The Anunnaki may have fallen, but in the heart of every new dawn, their memory lives on. The vast landscapes of Mesopotamia, with their deep rivers and endless deserts, tell stories of a time long forgotten, of a civilization that bent the very forces of nature to its will. But beneath this seemingly boundless power, there lay a fragility that would not be ignored. The Anunnaki, with their divine might and celestial authority, built not just cities and temples, but the very idea of immortality itself. And yet, from this very vision came the seeds of their undoing. It is often said that civilizations rise from the blood of their people, from the sweat of the laborers, and from the wars that shaped them. The Anunnaki were no strangers to this. Their empire was one of conquest, not just of lands, but of souls. They knew that power in its purest form was not just about wealth or territory, but about shaping the minds and hearts of those who followed them. They set out to forge a world in their image, a world that worshipped their gods and bowed to their laws. They called it peace, but it was peace wrought from the fire of destruction. Like the mighty rivers that flowed through their cities, the power of the Anunnaki surged through every corner of their empire. But rivers, too, have a way of changing course, of eroding the banks that once held them in check. And so, it was with the Anunnaki. The very order they imposed upon the world began to slip through their fingers. The empires they built were not eternal, as they had once hoped. They, too, were subject to the same forces that govern the rise and fall of all things: time, ambition, and the insatiable hunger for more. Their stories were written in stone, literally and figuratively. They sought to immortalize their deeds through the towering ziggurats, the sacred temples, the vast libraries filled with the wisdom of their gods. They wrote their names into the annals of history with the precision of scribes recording divine edicts. Their legacies were meant to last forever. And yet, it is a cruel truth of history that the more we seek to immortalize ourselves, the more fragile our legacies become. The gods they worshipped were as powerful as they were merciless. The very forces they harnessed, the winds, the rivers, the stars, turned against them. In their attempts to control the cosmos, they failed to see that the true power of the universe lies not in domination, but in understanding. The gods of the Anunnaki were no longer divine beings that walked among men, but symbols of human ambition, of the striving for greatness, and of the inevitable decay that follows. Their cities, once beacons of civilization, became ruins. The gods, once revered as eternal, were reduced to myth and legend. But in these ruins, there lies an undeniable beauty, a beauty found not in the grandeur of their achievements, but in the lessons their fall provides. The Anunnaki's story is not one of mere destruction. It is a reminder of the transience of all things. Their rise and their fall show us the danger of unchecked power, of the belief that we can bend the world to our will without consequence. And yet, within this tale of collapse, there is also a kind of tragic grace. For the very forces that led to their demise were also the ones that allowed them to shape the world in the first place. The Anunnaki, in their quest for immortality, gave birth to something that would live on long after their temples had crumbled into dust: the human imagination. The legacy of the Anunnaki is not in the stone of their buildings, nor in the written records of their exploits. It is in the hearts of those who came after them, who looked upon their ruins and saw not just failure, but potential. The Anunnaki did not simply fall, they were transformed. The memory of their civilization persists in the myths and stories that have survived across centuries, across cultures. The Anunnaki are no longer seen as gods who rule the heavens, but as symbols of humanity's ceaseless striving, its desire to reach for the stars even when the ground beneath its feet crumbles. The gods who once ruled the world now live on in the minds of those who dare to dream of something greater than themselves. They are the silent witnesses to the passing of time, the keepers of the wisdom that lies buried beneath the sands of the earth. In their fall, the Anunnaki became more than just a chapter in the history of a single empire. They became a symbol of all that is fleeting and all that is eternal. They show us that greatness is not measured by the height of the towers we build, but by the depth of the lessons we leave behind. Their story is not one of finality, but of transformation, an eternal cycle that mirrors the very forces of nature they sought to control. For just as the rivers flow back to the sea and the winds shift across the desert sands, so too does the legacy of the Anunnaki continue to shape the world. Their fall was not the end, but a beginning of a new chapter in the story of humanity. The story of the Anunnaki is not one of gods who have vanished, but of ideas that have lived on, transformed, and adapted to new realities. Their myth is the myth of us all, of our dreams, our fears, and our constant search for meaning in a world that is always changing, always slipping through our grasp. The Anunnaki were not just rulers of a forgotten age, they were the architects of an idea, the idea that civilization, in all its grandeur, is a reflection of the people who build it. Their fall, in its grandeur and its tragedy, is a mirror for all of us who seek to build empires, to shape the world in our image. It is a warning, but also an invitation to understand that the greatest power we can wield is not the power to conquer, but the power to create, to understand, and to let go when the time comes. In the end, it is not the empire that endures, but the ideas that live on in the hearts of those who remember. And the Anunnaki, with their rise and fall, have given us the ultimate lesson, that the only true immortality lies not in the stone monuments we erect, but in the ideas that continue to resonate, generation after generation. Their legacy is the legacy of all who have sought to understand the forces that shape us, who have dared to dream of a world greater than themselves. As the sands of time shift, so too does the story of the Anunnaki continue to unfold, not in the ruins of their cities, but in the stories we tell. And in those stories, we find the power to shape our own destinies. The Anunnaki may have fallen, but their lessons endure. And in the echoes of their rise and fall, we find the wisdom to guide us forward. As we stand upon the precipice of time, gazing into the depths of the ancient past, it is not the grandeur of the Anunnaki's empire that captivates us most, but rather the legacy they left behind in the minds of those who followed them. The fall of the Anunnaki was not just the collapse of a kingdom, nor was it the end of their story. In truth, their story lives on because of the very fragility that led to their undoing. It is this paradox, the simultaneous strength and vulnerability of the Anunnaki, that offers the greatest lessons. The human mind is shaped by the forces of nature, by the tides of time, and by the ambitions of those who came before. The rise and fall of the Anunnaki are not just historical events. They are metaphors for the cycles of life, the inevitable decay of even the greatest empires, and the immortal aspirations of humanity. Through the ruins of their cities, the fragments of their myths, and the dust of their temples, we are reminded of the constant struggle to balance power and humility, to seek immortality while understanding that we, too, are bound by the limits of our time on this earth. What is left when the kings and gods have passed? The stones of their palaces, the remnants of their grand cities, and the memories of their conquests. Perhaps, but more enduring than these physical relics, are the ideas they left behind. The Anunnaki believed in their gods' divine authority, and that belief forged empires and civilizations. But as their empire crumbled, it was not the gods that faded first, it was the belief in their own invincibility. In the end, the gods were no longer invulnerable, and their mortality, like that of their creators, became clear. Yet this loss, this fall from grace, is not merely a tragic tale. It is a story of resurrection. Just as the earth turns barren in winter only to bloom again in spring, so too did the fall of the Anunnaki give birth to new ideas. Their empire may have been built upon the stones of conquest and domination, but it was their intellectual contributions, those profound ideas about governance, order, and divinity, that would continue to shape humanity long after their physical presence had faded. From the ruins of the Anunnaki's kingdom, new civilizations would rise. Civilizations that, while they may not have worshipped the Anunnaki as gods, would carry their knowledge forward. In the great libraries of Babylon, in the scrolls of Sumer, in the teachings of priests and scribes, the wisdom of the Anunnaki continued to influence the cultures of the ancient world. It was no longer the Anunnaki themselves that mattered, but the ideas they had propagated. Ideas about law, about justice, about the divine right of kings. These would echo throughout the centuries, finding their place in the cultures of Egypt, Greece, and beyond. What can we learn from the Anunnaki's fall? Perhaps the most important lesson lies in their understanding of power, not as something to be wielded in arrogance or pride, but as a responsibility to be handled with reverence and humility. The Anunnaki rose to greatness through their mastery of the forces of nature, but their downfall came when they sought to control those very forces without acknowledging their own limitations. It is a tragic irony. In their attempt to be gods, they forgot the very humility that is essential to true greatness. The Anunnaki were not mere kings, nor were they simply conquerors of lands and peoples. They were the architects of ideas that continue to shape our understanding of the world. In their rise and fall, they remind us that the true power of civilization lies not in the ability to rule or conquer, but in the ability to understand and to adapt. It is in the constant cycle of creation and destruction, of birth and decay, that humanity finds its true purpose. As their empire crumbled, the wisdom of the Anunnaki was preserved not only in the minds of their followers, but in the very fabric of human history. Their legacy is not just a memory, but a living, breathing force that continues to influence us today. We may no longer worship their gods or invoke their names, but the lessons of their civilization persist in the institutions we have built, in the way we govern, in the way we organize our societies. The true significance of the Anunnaki's story is not that they were gods who fell from power, but that they were human. Humans who sought to transcend their own limitations, to conquer death and time. In this, they were like us all. Their journey is not just an ancient myth. It is a reflection of our own aspirations, our own struggles to create meaning and order in an ever-changing world. As the world shifts beneath our feet, we must remember that the rise and fall of the Anunnaki is not a story of defeat, but of transformation. Their fall made space for new ideas to emerge, for new civilizations to rise, and for the human spirit to continue its endless quest for knowledge and understanding. They may no longer walk among us, but their ideas have never truly left. Like the wind that carries the scent of the past, their influence continues to blow through the corridors of time, shaping the world that we inhabit today. And so, as we gaze upon the ruins of the Anunnaki, we do not simply see the remnants of a forgotten civilization. We see a reminder of our own potential for greatness and a warning of the fragility that comes with it. Their legacy is ours to carry forward, to learn from, and to pass on to the generations that will follow. In the end, it is not the stone monuments or the temples they built that endure, but the lessons they imparted through their rise, their fall, and the rebirth that followed. As the dust of their empire settles, the Anunnaki's legacy is a testament to the enduring power of ideas, ideas that transcend time, that survive the collapse of even the greatest empires, and that continue to shape the world in ways we may not yet fully understand. Their story is not just one of triumph and tragedy, but one of the timeless cycle of creation, destruction, and renewal that defines the human experience. The rise of the Anunnaki marks an age of unimaginable scale, where the will of the gods was projected upon the earth and carved the future of humanity. To understand this rise is to gaze into the heart of civilization itself, its formation, its ideals, its ambitions. The Anunnaki were not merely a pantheon of gods, they were the architects of destiny. The city of Uruk, glorious and sprawling, stood as a testament to their dominion, its walls rising like marble sentinels to the heavens. It was a city that bent the world to its will, where the divine and the mortal intertwined, and where ambition met divine providence. As the Anunnaki shaped the fate of kings and kingdoms, their influence was not confined to the divine realm. It seeped into the very marrow of human civilization. They built cities, but it was not the mortar or the stone that made them everlasting. No, it was the ideas they seeded, the principles they laid down in their sweeping conquests, the divine right of kings they enacted. The blood of brothers stained the lands, yet through such sacrifice, the order of their world was wrought. From blood came order, from order came eternity. And within that eternity, the Anunnaki would ascend to a power far greater than simple mortals could understand, beyond the realm of mortal kings, beyond the realm of even the gods themselves. This was a new dawn, the dawn of cities, of governance, of divine rule, intertwined with human ambition. Their rule was not like that of ordinary kings. No, what they commanded was a vision, a creation of something that transcended mere governance. Their power was not just that of a sovereign over a city-state. They wielded the vast forces of nature and fate itself. Yet, in all their might, in all their grandeur, there was one truth that echoed through the cosmos, like a resounding thunderclap. No civilization, no empire, can escape the inevitable pull of time's crushing hand, not even the gods themselves. The grandeur of the Anunnaki, the thunder of their footsteps, would eventually fall silent. From the height of their empire, from the grandeur of Uruk to the opulent courts of Babylon, one truth remained unchanged. There was a fragility at the heart of all things, and even the gods could not escape the inevitable. In the majestic sweep of history, the Anunnaki were not eternal. Like the great rivers they controlled, they too would flow and then cease. But what remained? What is the legacy of those who sought to build empires in their own image, to wrest order from chaos and bring light to the dark corners of the world? It is in the ruins of their cities, in the broken stones that once formed the temples to their gods, that we find our answer. Their legacy, one of immense ambition and grand designs, persists not in the monuments to their gods, but in the very soul of civilization itself. The Anunnaki, through their dreams of eternal rule, brought about an age of laws, of governance, and of empires. Their legacy lies not in what they built, but in the structures of the human mind that their ideas gave rise to. For it was in the divine laws of the Anunnaki that the first flickers of written language took shape, and in their governance that the earliest notions of justice, order, and kingship were defined. The heavens may have once bowed to their will, but now the heavens reside within us all, for the Anunnaki's true inheritance was not material, but intellectual. Yet, as time marches on, we must ask ourselves, did the Anunnaki, in their quest for dominion over time and space, ever truly grasp the full scope of their creation? For as empires rise, so too do they fall, as the wheels of time continue their unceasing march forward. The very principles that allowed the Anunnaki to flourish became the very ones that would ultimately lead to their downfall. In their attempt to control fate, they lost sight of the very thing they sought to command, the flow of time itself. Their cities crumbled, their mighty temples became dust, and in the end it was not divine will that governed their fate, but the cruel march of history. Still, their fall was not an end, but a transformation. From the ashes of their empire, new civilizations arose, each one carrying the spark of Anunnaki ideas into the future. These ideas, woven into the fabric of human civilization, grew into the very foundations of what we know today. The Anunnaki did not simply rule an empire, they created the framework upon which the future would be built. The very laws they wrote became the foundations of modern governance. The wisdom of their philosophers, the knowledge of their scribes, the lessons of their kings, all these would echo through the ages, reverberating in the cultures that followed. The Anunnaki may have been the architects of civilization, but they were also its cautionary tale. The empire that rose from their blood was marked not only by their divine vision, but by their refusal to see beyond their own creation. In the end, their empire was no longer a beacon of divine rule, but a shadow of what it once was. It is in this duality of creation and destruction that we find the true heart of the Anunnaki's legacy. Theirs was not an unbroken reign, nor was it an empire built on stability. It was a vision of what could be, a fleeting glimpse of eternity, forever tied to the world's endless dance between order and chaos. As we stand on the precipice of the past, gazing into the abyss of history, we are reminded that the Anunnaki's story is not one of eternal triumph, but of the very human struggle to reconcile ambition with humility. To seek greatness, to shape the world in our image, and yet to accept that in the end, we too are subject to the winds of time. The Anunnaki rose and fell, but in their rise and fall, they gave birth to ideas, to institutions, and to the very fabric of human civilization. Their story is not one of mere gods and mortals, but of the eternal dance between creation and destruction, between light and shadow. It is a story of humanity's boundless ambition and its inevitable limitations. From the heights of their empire to the depths of their fall, the Anunnaki's legacy is a testament to the enduring power of ideas. For in the end, it is not the temples or the palaces that endure, but the thoughts and principles that once shaped them. The Anunnaki may no longer walk the earth, but their ideas, their principles, their vision of a world bent to their will, these endure, forever shaping the course of history. As the Anunnaki's empire crumbled, its legacy endured in ways the gods themselves could never have predicted. The cities they built with divine ambition, the laws they forged with celestial authority, and the cultures they nurtured through their reign did not vanish with the fall of their temples. Instead, they were absorbed, adapted, and carried forward by those who came after them, slowly but surely, intertwining with the very soul of human civilization. It is within this aftermath, in the dust of fallen cities, that we find the most profound testament to the true nature of the Anunnaki's influence. For though their empire no longer stands, their ideas, those very ideas that sought to shape the world, to bring order to chaos, remain as eternal as the stars they once sought to command. And in this paradox, this tension between creation and destruction, lies the enduring strength of their legacy. The divine fire they ignited in the hearts of men could not be extinguished by the winds of time. Instead, it grew, taking root in new civilizations, evolving in ways they themselves could never have foreseen. Look, for instance, at the emergence of the great empires that followed in the wake of the Anunnaki: Babylonia, Persia, Greece, and Rome. All of these civilizations were deeply influenced by the principles laid down by the Anunnaki. Though the names of the gods may have changed, the underlying ideas of governance, divine rule, and law remained. The rise of the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar II echoed the Anunnaki's vision of a divine city-state, with Babylon's mighty ziggurats reaching ever higher, as if to reclaim the heavens once held by their gods. The Persian Empire, too, borrowed from the Anunnaki's tradition of centralized power and divine kingship, weaving the notion of celestial legitimacy into the fabric of its rule. Even the Greeks, in their philosophical and political endeavors, could not escape the echoes of Mesopotamian thought, whether in their worship of gods like Zeus, who mirrored the Anunnaki's Marduk, or in their structured approach to governance and law. Yet, despite these legacies, the world that emerged after the Anunnaki's fall was not the same. It was a world in which the gods no longer directly ruled, but their influence remained, shaping the way humans approach the cosmos, the divine, and their place within it. The divine became less an immediate presence and more an abstract idea, an ideal that existed in the hearts of kings and philosophers. What was once a tangible rule of gods over men became a more intellectual, philosophical exploration of divine justice, cosmic order, and human agency. This shift, from divine rule to human rule, from gods that shaped the world to humans who shaped their own destinies, was not just a political or theological transformation. It was a cultural evolution. It marked a moment when the power of the Anunnaki was internalized, not just worshipped from afar. Their ideas became principles that informed human decisions, that shaped art, literature, and law. It was as though the Anunnaki had sown the seeds of thought and culture so deeply into the soil of humanity that even after their physical power had faded, their intellectual legacy grew stronger, finding new expression in the minds of those who succeeded them. But even this transformation was not without its complications. The humanization of divine authority, the gradual shift from gods ruling over men to men attempting to define their own destinies, brought with it a loss. The divine connection, so once real and tangible, began to feel more distant. The gods, once so intimately tied to the fate of humanity, became increasingly abstract, their presence more symbolic than active. This sense of divine detachment bred a new way of thinking, one that valued human agency over divine will. But it also created a spiritual vacuum, a yearning for something more immediate, more tangible, that could fill the void left by the gods' departure. Thus, humanity began to look inward, seeking meaning in its own creations, in its own ability to shape the world. This introspection, this search for meaning beyond the divine, became one of the key forces that pushed human civilization toward intellectual and cultural revolutions. The rise of philosophy, science, and reason, so often seen as a break from religious tradition, was, in many ways, the legacy of the Anunnaki's divine reign. The pursuit of knowledge, the quest to understand the universe, the drive to bring order to chaos. These were all ideas that had been seeded by the gods, but which now became the domain of human intellect. And yet, even as humanity moved forward, the Anunnaki's vision of the world, of order through divine authority, remained a powerful force, one that could not be completely shed. It echoed through the rise of monarchies, the establishment of legal systems, and the creation of powerful empires that sought to mirror the divine authority of old. The notion of divine kingship, of rulers who were believed to hold the mandate of heaven, was not simply a relic of the past, but a living legacy that continued to shape the world for centuries. It found expression in the sacred kings of Egypt, the emperors of Rome, and the dynasties of China, all of whom saw themselves as the earthly representatives of divine will. But just as the Anunnaki had once risen to power, so too did their empire fall. The inevitability of time, the same force that had once bound the gods to their will, would inevitably undo even the most powerful of empires. Just as the Anunnaki had built their cities to stand for eternity, they too fell to the ravages of time, their once mighty structures reduced to ruins. The eternal city, their earthly paradise, crumbled as all things do. Yet, even in their fall, there was something magnificent, something eternal. For in the ruins, in the silence that followed their demise, their legacy endured. The Anunnaki, through their rise and fall, revealed the ultimate truth about civilization itself, that nothing is truly permanent. Empires rise and empires fall, but the ideas that give birth to them live on, shaping the world long after the rulers have gone. Their story, the story of the Anunnaki, is not one of defeat, but of transformation, a story that continues to resonate with us today as we too seek to shape our world and leave our own legacy for those who will follow. Thus, the fall of the Anunnaki is not the end of their influence, but the beginning of a new chapter. One where their ideas are no longer the domain of the gods, but of mankind. Their legacy lives on, not in the ruins of their temples, but in the very fabric of our civilization, where their vision of order and destiny continues to shape the course of history. It is a story of rise and fall, of creation and destruction, but also of the eternal struggle to find meaning in a world that, despite its impermanence, still calls out for greatness. And in that struggle, the Anunnaki will always remain, not as gods who once ruled, but as the architects of a world we still strive to understand. The story of the Anunnaki is one of magnificence and melancholy, a tale that echoes through the annals of time, not just as a history, but as a question, an inquiry into the heart of civilization itself. It is the story of gods who reigned with divine authority, who shaped the earth beneath their feet and the heavens above their heads, whose vision turned mere dust into cities, whose ambition bent the world to their will. And yet, for all their might, their reign was finite. A moment of brilliance followed by a fall, an immortal echo of all things mortal. In the beginning, there was nothing. The world was a blank slate, waiting for the divine hand to carve its shape into the raw earth. The Anunnaki came, bringing with them the gifts of civilization, writing, law, agriculture. They shaped the first cities, not just in stone, but in the very soul of the human race. They bestowed knowledge, ignited curiosity, and set mankind on a path toward greatness, a path that would later be paved by others who could not remember their names, but would walk in their shadow, unknowingly shaped by the gods who had gone before them. They were, in essence, the architects of time. They constructed the world as it was meant to be, a place of order and symmetry, where the chaos of the untamed earth could be tamed, and where the celestial powers could meet the power of human endeavor. But in the end, the very things that made them gods, their ability to impose order, their vision to craft a world of meaning, became the very cause of their undoing. It is a paradox that defines the Anunnaki's rise and fall, the very essence of their tragedy. They built empires that defied time. They constructed cities that should have stood forever, marble and stone bound together by the will of the divine. Yet, just as their creations were eternal in their magnificence, they were destined to fade away, swallowed by time's insatiable tide. The marble of eternity crumbled, not from the wear of centuries, but from the disillusionment of a world that could not sustain the weight of such a vision. Perhaps it was this very vision, their unwavering belief in the immortality of their creations, that led to their downfall. They imposed order on the chaos of the world, but in doing so, they ignored the natural ebb and flow of time. They sought to carve out a place in the heavens, but like the Icarus of old, they flew too close to the sun. In the end, it was not the armies of men that defeated them, nor the armies of other gods, but the relentless force of time which claimed even the mightiest of beings. The fall of the Anunnaki is not a story of violent destruction, nor of sudden ruin. It is the story of a slow, inevitable decay, a civilization that crumbled beneath the weight of its own ambition. Their cities, once resplendent in their divine radiance, faded into ruins, their towering ziggurats reduced to dust. The laws they laid down, which once governed the very heart of society, became forgotten, ignored in favor of new ideals. The great temples, once filled with the voices of prayer and worship, were abandoned, their walls hollowed by time's steady march. Yet, in the ruins, there is still beauty. For as their cities fell, so too did the seed of their vision take root in the world around them. The people they left behind, the children of their dreams, continued to carry their legacy forward. In the shadows of their fallen temples, new empires rose: Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, all of them shaped by the same ideals that the Anunnaki had once so fiercely guarded. The Anunnaki's vision of civilization, order, law, and knowledge became the foundation upon which these new empires were built. And though the gods themselves were no longer present, their influence lived on, woven into the very fabric of these new societies. The fall of the Anunnaki, then, is not an end, but a transformation. It is the shift from the divine to the human, from gods who once ruled over men to men who, inspired by the divine, sought to shape their own destiny. The ideas the Anunnaki had instilled in humanity, order, law, the search for knowledge, survived their fall and were passed down through the generations. The ruins of their temples became the classrooms of future scholars. The desolate streets of their cities became the sites of new political systems, and the laws they created became the foundation for future civilizations. In this sense, the fall of the Anunnaki is not a defeat, but a triumph of their ideas. They gave humanity the tools to build, to create, and to understand the world. Their fall, then, is not the end of their story, but the beginning of ours. For in the ashes of their empire, we find the embers of our own civilization, a civilization that still bears their mark, even if we no longer remember their names. Yet, even as the world moved on, the Anunnaki remained present, not as gods, but as the architects of human civilization. Their influence cannot be erased. The temples may have crumbled, the laws may have been forgotten, but their vision of order, of a world shaped by divine will, continues to haunt the very structure of the societies that followed them. Even in the absence of their physical presence, their ideals remain, echoing through the corridors of time. And so, we come to the question that has always haunted the human race. What does it mean to build? What does it mean to leave a legacy? The Anunnaki, in their rise and fall, have shown us that it is not the material things we leave behind that define us, but the ideas we inspire in those who come after us. For it is in the ideas we plant in the minds of others that we truly live forever. The Anunnaki may have fallen, but their vision, their legacy, endures, not in the ruins of their cities, but in the minds of those who continue to build upon the foundation they laid. In the end, the Anunnaki story is not one of failure, but of transformation. It is the story of a vision that transcends time, of ideas that continue to shape the world long after the gods themselves have faded from memory. It is a story of human ambition, of the desire to create, to understand, and to leave something eternal behind. And in that desire, in that quest for immortality, we see not only the Anunnaki, but ourselves struggling to leave our mark upon the world. The story of the Anunnaki, while drenched in the majesty of its rise and the inevitability of its fall, is more than just a tale of ancient gods and lost empires. It is the story of humanity itself, the unyielding desire to shape the world, to leave behind something that endures beyond the reach of time. And in that pursuit, the Anunnaki's fate becomes a mirror, reflecting the greatest aspirations and the deepest flaws of mankind. As their temples crumbled and their laws faded, something profound began to take root in the very soil they had once shaped. The people who followed them, the children of their dreams, looked upon the ruins and saw not the end, but the beginning of something new. From the ashes of their civilization, the first seeds of human ambition, ambitions that once mirrored the gods' desires to rule, took root. The Anunnaki had shown the way to build, but it was up to humanity to continue the journey. Their downfall was not an act of divine retribution, but an inevitable consequence of the very greatness they had sought to achieve. The gods sought immortality by crafting empires that would stretch across the horizon and into the heavens. They tried to bend the world to their will, and in that effort, they grew blind to the subtle forces that shape the course of time. The very traits that made them gods, their pride, their unyielding pursuit of order, and their vision for a perfect world, became their undoing. Their empire fell not because it was weak, but because it was too great for its time, too grand a vision for a world that was still learning to understand its own power. The gods built their cities to stand forever, but in doing so, they failed to see that permanence itself is an illusion. The world is a cycle, forever turning, forever changing, and the Anunnaki, for all their divine wisdom, could not escape the inevitable decline that comes with the passing of time. The marble of their palaces, once gleaming with divine light, began to crack. The laws they set in stone were ignored. The knowledge they passed down became lost in the winds of change. And yet, even in the midst of their fall, they left behind a legacy far greater than any stone structure or divine edict. The legacy of the Anunnaki was not in the things they built, but in the ideas they instilled. They taught humanity the value of order and law, the importance of knowledge and wisdom, and the potential of civilization to transcend the chaos of nature. The gods may have fallen, but their teachings did not vanish with them. They were passed down through generations, transforming from divine commands into the fundamental principles that have shaped human society ever since. The civilizations that arose after the fall of the Anunnaki, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, all built upon the foundation that the gods had laid. And though they were unaware of the gods' existence, they were unknowingly shaped by their ideals. The Anunnaki had shown that to build a civilization was to create a reflection of the cosmos itself. They had shown that humanity could transcend the chaos of the natural world and build something greater than itself. And though their cities may have fallen, that vision lived on in the hearts of those who came after them. But this vision was not without its cost. For the more the gods sought to impose order upon the world, the more they unknowingly stifled the very force that made humanity unique, its ability to adapt, to change, and to grow. The Anunnaki sought perfection, but perfection is a fleeting thing, always just beyond reach. The gods may have created laws, but they could not account for the unpredictable nature of humanity itself. And so, their creation, their empire, crumbled under the weight of its own ambition. And yet, within that very collapse, there was a beauty, a sadness, and a magnificence intertwined. The fall of the Anunnaki was not the death of their vision, but a transformation. It was the passing of one era, the end of the gods' reign, and the beginning of humanity's own story. For in the ruins of their empire, the world found a new way to build, one that was no longer bound by divine edicts, but shaped by the hands of men and women. The Anunnaki had shown humanity the way, but it was up to humanity to walk the path. In that way, the story of the Anunnaki is not just the story of gods and their downfall. It is the story of the rise of humanity itself. It is the story of a species that looked to the heavens, saw the gods, and decided that they, too, could build something eternal. The Anunnaki may have fallen, but they left behind the blueprint for the civilizations that followed them, and in doing so, they ensured that their vision would never truly fade. It is not the fall of the Anunnaki that defines their legacy, but the way in which their ideas, transformed, adapted, and reinterpreted, continue to shape the course of human history. From the blood of gods came the rise of empires, and from the ruins of their civilization came the birth of a new world. The Anunnaki's fall was not the end, but the beginning of something far greater, the story of humanity's enduring quest to build, to understand, and to transcend the world they were given. And so, the legacy of the Anunnaki lives on, not in the stones of their temples or the ruins of their cities, but in the very foundation of the civilizations they helped create. In the end, the Anunnaki, like all great civilizations, were bound by the forces of time. Their vision was too grand for their age, too perfect for the chaos that surrounded them. But in their fall, they created something eternal, the spark of civilization, the desire to create, to understand, and to transcend. And as long as humanity continues to build, to dream, and to reach for the stars, the Anunnaki will live on, not as gods, but as the architects of a world that continues to evolve, to grow, and to aspire. Their fall may have been inevitable, but their legacy, their vision, remains, forever etched in the fabric of human history. As the Anunnaki ascended into the heavens of their celestial ambitions, they built a civilization so vast and majestic that it seemed impervious to the inevitable grasp of time. Their empire, like the gods themselves, was a reflection of human will, a testament to what can be achieved when man's imagination collides with the Earth's raw potential. Yet, in their striving to create an eternal order, they unwittingly sowed the seeds of their own demise. The ruins of their civilization now lie scattered, not as remnants of a forgotten age, but as a stark reminder of the fleeting nature of human power. They built their empire with the certainty of gods, but in the end, it was the same human frailty, the very essence of mortality, that tore it asunder. In this magnificent story of the Anunnaki, we encounter not only the triumphs of gods, but the enduring struggle of humanity itself, a battle between ambition and limitation, between creation and destruction. The rise of the Anunnaki mirrors our own dreams of transcending the ordinary to reach for something greater. It is the story of humankind's ceaseless desire to leave behind a legacy, to create something monumental that will stand the test of time. And yet, the fall of the Anunnaki serves as a quiet, inevitable warning that no matter how great our empires may become, they too are destined to fall, as all things must. But there is a deeper truth hidden beneath the surface of their decline, one that transcends their failure. For in their fall, we find a paradox. Their greatness, their drive, their vision for a world shaped by divine law, gave birth to something new, something that would in time surpass even their grandest dreams. Their civilization may have crumbled, but their legacy was not lost. Instead, it was absorbed, integrated, and ultimately reimagined by the generations that followed. The Anunnaki were not merely gods who ruled. They were the architects of a new kind of order, a blueprint for human civilization itself. They had created the conditions for the rise of empires that would learn from their triumphs and mistakes, shaping the course of history long after their empire turned to dust. From the bloodshed of their wars and the collapse of their grand cities, the Anunnaki's influence endured. Their vision for a world governed by order, law, and wisdom did not die with their empire. It was carried forward by the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans, each of them, unknowingly, carrying the torch that the Anunnaki had once lit. In this way, the fall of the Anunnaki did not mark the end of their legacy, but rather the beginning of a new chapter in human history. This is the essence of their story, that even in their destruction, the seeds of their civilization found fertile ground in the hearts and minds of those who came after. Their downfall was not a catastrophe. It was a passage, a transition, a part of the eternal cycle of rise and fall that defines the history of humankind. The Anunnaki may have been gods, but their greatest gift to humanity was not their power. It was the legacy of their ideas. The belief that civilization could be built upon wisdom, upon law, and upon the shared understanding of human purpose and destiny. And in that belief, we find the true power of the Anunnaki, the ability to inspire future generations to reach beyond themselves, to build upon what they had left behind, and to create something that transcended the gods themselves. The fall of the Anunnaki also forces us to confront a deeper truth. That civilization, in its most grand and sweeping form, is fragile. The gods, in their quest to bring order to chaos, failed to see that in seeking to control the world, they had unknowingly invited the very forces that would destroy them. It is not enough to build. One must also understand the forces that threaten to tear down what has been created. The Anunnaki's empire was built on power, but it was also built on blind ambition, on the desire to create something that could not be undone. And in this pursuit, they neglected the most essential part of what makes civilization truly enduring: the ability to adapt, to change, and to flow with the tides of time. Humanity, in contrast, is defined not by its rigidity, but by its capacity for evolution. The Anunnaki may have been gods, but it was the people who followed them, the children of their dreams, who truly embodied the potential of the human spirit. It is their story that comes after the fall of the Anunnaki, humanity's own rise from the ashes of the gods' ambitions. It is in the wake of the Anunnaki's fall that the true potential of human civilization begins to shine. The gods may have shaped the world, but it was humanity that learned to live within it. As we reflect upon the rise and fall of the Anunnaki, we see not just a tale of gods and mortals, but a mirror of our own ambitions and limitations. We are the inheritors of their dreams, and yet we are also bound by the same forces that brought their empire to its knees. Their story, though ancient, speaks directly to us today. It asks us to consider, what are we building, and what will be the cost of our own ambitions? The Anunnaki sought to shape the world, but it is the world itself, with all its impermanence and uncertainty, that ultimately shapes us. And so, as we stand at the crossroads of our own civilization, we must ask, what lessons can we learn from the gods who once ruled the earth? The Anunnaki may have fallen, but their story endures. It is a story not of divine beings, but of human aspirations, and the eternal struggle to create something lasting in a world that is constantly changing. The gods may have built their empire upon the strength of their vision, but it was humanity that would build the future. Their fall, then, is not the end of their legacy. It is a reminder of the fragility of all empires and the enduring power of the human spirit to rise, to rebuild, and to continue the journey that the gods began so long ago. The fall of the Anunnaki, though a tragic event for their empire, is not simply a story of loss. It is also a story of transformation, of renewal, and ultimately, of rebirth. As their cities fell into ruin and their temples crumbled to dust, the spirit of their civilization did not simply dissipate into the ether. No, It persisted, lurking beneath the surface of human history, waiting for the right moment to re-emerge in a new form. This is the essence of civilization itself, its death and rebirth, its continual cycle of rise and fall. What the Anunnaki failed to understand was that their power was not eternal. They, like every empire before and after them, believed their rule was invincible. The truth, however, is that no civilization can withstand the forces of time indefinitely. The same forces that created their grandeur, that shaped the very landscape in their image, were also the forces that would tear them apart. Power, as the Anunnaki learned, is fleeting. It ebbs and flows like the tide, rising with the moon and falling with the sun. But even in their fall, they left behind something far more enduring than their monuments or their wealth. They left behind an idea that transcended time and place, an idea that would survive long after their empire had vanished from the earth. It was an idea that shaped the future of all subsequent civilizations. The belief that humanity could control its destiny, that human beings could organize themselves and shape the world around them, did not die with the Anunnaki. Rather, it was passed on, like an ember from one generation to the next, until it ignited once again in the hearts of new empires. The Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, all of these civilizations drew from the wellspring of knowledge and vision that the Anunnaki had laid down before them. The gods of Mesopotamia, though they had faded into legend, continued to influence the gods of these new worlds. The very notion of divine kingship, of law and order enforced by the will of the gods, was inherited from the Anunnaki. The belief that the ruler was not merely a man, but a god on earth, an intermediary between the heavens and the people, was a legacy that stretched across millennia, woven into the fabric of human history. And yet, despite their legacy, the Anunnaki's downfall serves as a sobering reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition. They sought to create an empire that could not be undone, but in doing so, they sealed their own fate. Their desire for power, their obsession with controlling the world, blinded them to the forces that lay beyond their grasp. And in this, they were no different from any other civilization that has risen to greatness only to fall into ruin. It is in this tragedy that we find the most profound lessons. For in the end, it is not the gods who shape the world. It is the world that shapes the gods. The Anunnaki may have once believed that they controlled the destiny of the earth, but in reality, they were mere players in a larger cosmic game. The forces that created their empire, that allowed them to rise to such heights, were the same forces that brought them low. Their downfall is not a tale of failure, but a reminder of the fragility of all things, the impermanence of all empires, no matter how powerful they may seem. Yet, it is this very fragility that makes their story so powerful. The Anunnaki, in their grandeur and their fall, embody the human condition itself, the endless striving for greatness, the inevitable clash with limitations, and the ultimate reconciliation with our mortality. Their story is a mirror, reflecting back to us our own desires, our own struggles, and our own inevitable decline. And in this, there is a certain beauty, an acceptance of the truth that all things must pass, that all empires must fall, and that the greatest power lies not in control, but in the ability to adapt and survive. For the Anunnaki, their empire was built upon the foundation of their own image of power, but it was also built upon the very forces that would one day destroy them. In the ashes of their civilization, however, a new truth emerged. The wisdom that the Anunnaki imparted to humanity was not in their control, but in their understanding of the world around them. The lessons they left behind, the knowledge of the cosmos, the understanding of the cycles of life and death, were passed down through the ages, not as a warning, but as a guide. The world may have turned against them, but the seeds they planted endured, and from those seeds grew the civilizations that would shape the future of humanity. It is not just the Anunnaki who were caught in this cycle. It is every civilization that has ever risen and fallen. From the ashes of every empire, new ideas are born, and the cycle continues. The Romans inherited the lessons of the Anunnaki, as did the medieval Christians, the Islamic empires, and the modern world that followed. Each civilization, in its own way, has drawn from the well of the past, shaping its own vision of the future, yet always haunted by the knowledge that nothing lasts forever. The lesson of the Anunnaki is not one of despair, but of hope. It is a reminder that even in the face of failure, even in the face of destruction, there is always the possibility of rebirth. The Anunnaki may have fallen, but their influence did not end with their empire. Their ideas, their knowledge, their vision for the world lived on through the ages, passed from one civilization to the next, shaping the course of human history. As we look to the future, we must ask ourselves, what will be our legacy? What will we leave behind when our own empires crumble, as they inevitably will? Will we, like the Anunnaki, seek to create something eternal, only to fall victim to our own hubris? Or will we learn from their mistakes and build something that can endure, something that can withstand the forces of time and change? In the end, it is not the gods who shape the world. It is humanity itself. The Anunnaki may have shaped their empire with the power of the gods, but it was humanity that carried their legacy forward. Their empire may have fallen, but their story has not ended. It lives on in the hearts and minds of those who came after them, in the civilizations that followed, and in the endless cycle of rise and fall that defines the human experience. The Anunnaki may have been gods, but their greatest gift to humanity was not their power. It was their vision. It was the vision of a world where law, order, and wisdom governed the lives of men. A world where humanity could rise above its limitations and create something greater than itself. That vision, though lost with their empire, continues to shape the world we live in today. And in that, we find the true power of the Anunnaki. Not in their control of the world, but in their ability to inspire future generations to rise, to rebuild, and to carry forward the legacy they left behind. As the final breath of a once mighty empire echoed in the twilight of its existence, the ancient world stood in awe and sorrow. An empire that had once bent the world to its will, sculpting landscapes, shaping destinies, and casting shadows that stretched across continents, now lay in ruin. What does it mean for an empire to fall? What does it say about the nature of mankind? That our greatest creations, built with blood, sweat, and boundless ambition, eventually crumble into dust. The fall of an empire is not a singular event. It is not just a moment in time, but a long, unfolding tragedy that mirrors the human condition. From the first crack in the foundation to the final collapse of its towering structures, the death of an empire is a story of ambition and hubris, of dreams and disillusionment. Yet in its downfall, there is not only tragedy, but also a profound beauty. The beauty of understanding the fragility of human endeavors and the impermanence of all things. Empires are born from a collective vision, an idea so powerful that it can move mountains, carve rivers into the earth, and build monuments that touch the sky. They are forged in the fires of war and the ambition of kings and emperors who seek to leave their mark upon the world. But what is it that makes empires so fragile? What causes them to unravel like a tapestry woven too tightly, each thread pulling the others into chaos? The answers lie in the nature of power itself. Power is not merely the ability to conquer, to control, or to dominate. Power is an intoxicating force that can blind those who wield it. It is a force that corrupts, that twists the intentions of even the noblest rulers. And when the foundations of power are built on greed, exploitation, and a disregard for the human cost of ambition, the empire, no matter how grand, is doomed to fall. In the shadows of this collapse, one cannot help but feel the echoes of ancient voices, whispering lessons of old. The rise of empires is often a story of great courage, great vision, and great sacrifice. But the fall is inevitable. Empires grow complacent in their power, thinking themselves invincible. They become arrogant in their success, blinded by their own grandeur. The downfall is always a slow erosion, the undermining of the very ideals upon which the empire was built. From within, the rot spreads, and from the outside, the forces of nature, of time, and of other powers eventually tear at the seams of the empire's walls. Yet, in the ashes of this destruction, there is a strange form of rebirth. For every empire that crumbles, its lessons are carried forward, embedded in the bones of the land. Every stone that falls from a crumbling temple is an echo of history, a reminder that nothing is eternal. And from the ruins of these ancient civilizations, new ideas, new cultures, and new empires will rise. For in the collapse of one, the seeds of the future are sown. The beauty of this cycle lies not in the finality of the fall, but in the resilience of humanity. For as long as there are men and women who dream of greatness, who reach for the stars, there will be those who rise after the fall. There is no true end, only the beginning of a new chapter in the endless saga of human civilization. In the ruins of the ancient world, the world of this fallen empire, we find not only sorrow, but also wisdom. It is a wisdom that has been handed down through the centuries, from one generation to the next, in the form of stories, teachings, and myths. These lessons, though born from the dust of ancient empires, still resonate with us today. They remind us of the impermanence of power, of the fleeting nature of all human achievement, and of the importance of humility in the face of greatness. For what is an empire, after all, but a reflection of the human soul? It is a mirror that shows us our greatest aspirations, our deepest flaws, and our most profound fears. The rise and fall of empires are the rise and fall of humanity itself, a cycle of birth, growth, decay, and renewal that will continue as long as the human spirit endures. And in that spirit, there is always the hope of rebirth, of new beginnings, and of the promise that from the ashes of the old, something new will always rise. In the end, the fall of an empire is not just the end of a political entity. It is the end of an age, a way of thinking, a way of being. And with its fall, new possibilities arise. Possibilities that, like the ancient civilizations before them, will one day face their own decline, but will also inspire future generations to reach ever higher. For empires, like all things, must fall. But from their fall, humanity learns. And as long as we continue to dream, to aspire, and to reach beyond the horizon, the legacy of every fallen empire lives on, not as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to the eternal human spirit that will always rise again. The fall of an empire is always a painful thing to witness. As the final ruins crumble beneath the weight of time and the hands of history, the air thickens with the sorrow of what has been lost. Yet in the midst of this destruction, there is something undeniably powerful, a lesson, a reflection, a revelation of the fragile nature of human endeavor. As the last stone falls and the dust settles, we are left to grapple not only with the loss of grandeur, but with the question that lingers in the air. What was it all for? Empires do not fall overnight. Their decline is not the result of a single battle or a singular force that emerges from the shadows to strike them down. No, the fall of an empire is the culmination of decades, even centuries, of decay. It is a slow unraveling, like the rotting of wood in the dark corners of a forgotten castle, a place once filled with laughter, ambition, and power. But over time, as the years pass and the world around them changes, empires lose their vigor. The fabric that once held them together begins to fray. The vision that once guided them grows clouded, obscured by the weight of corruption, disillusionment, and greed. It is easy, perhaps, to look at an empire in its dying moments and see only the ruins, the disrepair, and the suffering. We look at the crumbling buildings, the abandoned streets, and the dust that chokes the once vibrant life of the city, and we think to ourselves that it was all for nothing. But in doing so, we miss the deeper truth, that the fall of an empire is also a testament to human resilience, a reflection of humanity's ability to rebuild and renew, to take the lessons of the past and forge new paths forward. The empire may have crumbled, but the spirit of those who built it remains, etched into the very land they left behind. The blood, sweat, and sacrifice of the men and women who dreamed of greatness is not lost to history. It lives on in the stories passed down through the generations, in the myths and legends that endure long after the empire has fallen. And from these stories we draw the wisdom that guides us forward, for we are not meant to simply remember the fall, but to learn from it. For every empire that has fallen, new possibilities have emerged. The old power structures may collapse, but new ideas take root. New visions are born, and new leaders rise to fill the void left by the former rulers. In this way, the fall of an empire becomes a part of the eternal cycle of human civilization. The fall is not an end, but a necessary step in the larger journey. Just as a tree must shed its leaves in the fall to make way for new growth in the spring, so too must empires give way to new ideas, new systems, and new dreams. It is in this delicate balance between the old and the new that humanity finds its strength. The fall of empires teaches us that nothing is permanent, not power, not wealth, not even the grandest of cities. The greatness of an empire lies not in the size of its walls or the strength of its armies, but in the vision that inspired it, in the dreams that its leaders and people dared to dream, and in the lessons they leave behind. And what are those lessons? Perhaps they are reminders of humility, the understanding that power must be wielded with wisdom and grace, and that no one, no empire, no leader is immune to the forces of time and fate. Perhaps the lesson is that no matter how high we rise, we must always remember that we are part of something greater than ourselves, something that transcends borders, languages, and empires. In the end, it is not the empires we build that define us, but the legacy we leave behind. The legacy of a fallen empire is a complex thing. It is not just the memories of its grandeur or the echoes of its achievements that endure. It is also the mistakes, the struggles, and the suffering. These are the stories we often shy away from, the parts of history we would rather forget. Yet it is these very stories that shape us. They remind us that greatness is never achieved without sacrifice, and that every empire is built on the backs of those who are forgotten by history. They remind us that power is fleeting, and that only those who understand its impermanence can truly wield it wisely. In the end, the fall of an empire is not a tragedy. It is a triumph of the human spirit. It is a reminder that while the physical structures we build may fall, the ideas, the dreams, and the lessons we leave behind cannot be so easily destroyed. They are carried forward by those who come after us, woven into the fabric of the world, shaping the course of history long after the empire itself is gone. And so, as we stand in the ruins of what once was, we are not merely looking at the past. We are looking at the future, at the infinite possibilities that arise from the ashes of the old. The fall of an empire is a moment of reflection, of mourning, but also of hope. It is a moment to ask ourselves what we can learn from the past and how we can use that wisdom to build something new, something greater. For in the end, the rise and fall of empires is not just a story of political power. It is the story of humanity itself, of our constant striving, our constant dreaming, and our eternal desire to leave something meaningful behind. The lesson of the fallen empire is simple. We must not be afraid to fall. For it is only through our falls, through our moments of destruction, that we are given the chance to rise again, stronger and wiser than before. Just as the phoenix rises from its ashes, so too can humanity rise from the ruins of its greatest failures. The story of the fallen empire is not one of despair, but one of hope. A hope that from the darkest moments of history, something new and beautiful will always emerge. And so, as we stand among the ruins, we must remember, the empire may fall, but the spirit of its people will live on, carried forward by the winds of time, forever shaping the world that follows. It is this spirit, this indomitable will to endure, that is the true legacy of any empire. And it is this spirit that will continue to guide us long after the dust of history has settled. In the quiet shadows of history, there lies a moment, a single point in time, when the path taken by empires and civilizations diverges, often imperceptibly, yet irrevocably. It is in these moments that the fate of a people is decided, not through a grand battle or a sudden betrayal, but in the slow, deliberate erosion of ideals, the steady corrosion of power, the fracturing of once unbreakable foundations. The people who once marched with ambition and the boldness of conquerors now walk through the ruins of their legacy, gazing upon the broken remnants of their dreams. The rise of empires is a story of grandeur, a tale of visionaries who dared to dream beyond the borders of the known world, bending the very fabric of civilization to the shape of their ambition. But the fall of empires, that is another story. One not so easily told in the light of triumph, but one that must be told in the quiet aftermath of defeat. In the dust that clings to the cracked marble, in the whispers of the past that echo in the silence of broken walls. For the fall of an empire is often more a matter of time than of action. It is not a cataclysmic event, nor is it a sudden rupture of the world's order. It is a slow, creeping decline, an accumulation of small fractures that over time become too large to ignore. A shift in the balance of power, a change in the air, a shift in values. These things, so subtle at first, ripple outwards and slowly pull the empire into its inevitable collapse. Yet as the empire falls, as the ruins pile up and the once mighty structures crumble, we are left to reckon with the legacy of that empire. For the fall of a great empire is not simply the death of a political system, nor the collapse of a singular nation. It is the death of an idea, a way of life, a vision that once bound a people together. It is the end of an era, yes, but also the beginning of something new, a new chapter in the story of human civilization, a new opportunity to rebuild, to rise again from the ashes. The fall of an empire is not something to be mourned, nor is it something to be celebrated with a careless shrug. It is, instead, a reminder of how fragile human endeavor truly is, how even the mightiest of civilizations are vulnerable to the forces of time, of change, of human nature itself. It is a reminder that no empire, no matter how vast, no matter how strong, is beyond the reach of history's inevitable march. For in the wake of destruction, there is always something left behind. It is in the ruins that we find the lessons of the past, and it is through those lessons that we find the strength to rebuild. There is a certain beauty in the ruins, in the way the past lingers in the present, in the way the echoes of ancient voices resonate across the centuries. But there is also a tragedy in the loss of what could have been, in the potential left untapped, in the promise unfulfilled. The destruction of empires is never without its cost. The bloodshed, the suffering, the sacrifices made by those who fought for something they believed in. These are the forgotten voices, the ones that are often lost to history, erased in the wake of political upheaval, swept away by the winds of time. But their stories, too, must be told. For it is through their struggles, through their dreams and their disappointments, that we find the true meaning of an empire's rise and fall. Empires are built on the backs of the people who serve them, the laborers, the soldiers, the artisans, the thinkers. It is easy to look at the grand structures, the sweeping monuments, the wars won, and the conquests achieved, and forget the ordinary men and women who made them possible. Yet, without their sacrifices, their toil, their dreams, the empire would never have come into being in the first place. It is their legacy, too, that must be remembered. But what happens when those people, those dreamers, find themselves in the ruins of their own making? When the empire they built with blood, sweat, and tears crumbles beneath their feet? What does it mean for them, for us, when the world that they helped create begins to unravel? It is here that the true tragedy of the empire's fall is revealed. In the quiet despair of those who gave everything for a vision that no longer exists, in the silence of the fallen city, in the unanswered questions that linger in the air. The fall of an empire is not just the death of its rulers, nor the end of its military campaigns. It is the end of a vision, a way of life that defined the identity of its people. It is the collapse of a dream that, once realized, gave purpose and direction to an entire civilization. And as that dream fades, so too does the sense of meaning, the sense of belonging, the sense of pride that once sustained the empire's people. And yet, even in the aftermath, there remains a glimmer of hope. The fall of an empire is not the end of civilization. It is merely a moment in its long, winding journey. For every empire that falls, a new one rises. For every vision that fades into history, a new dream takes its place. The fall of one empire does not mark the end of human ambition, for as long as there are people who dream, there will always be the potential for new beginnings, new possibilities, new visions of the future. The fall of an empire is a turning point, a moment of reckoning. It is a chance to reflect on the past, to learn from the mistakes of those who came before, and to forge a new path forward. It is a reminder that nothing is permanent, that all things, even the greatest of empires, must eventually come to an end. But it is also a reminder that, even in the face of destruction, there is always the possibility of rebirth. From the ashes of the fallen empire, new ideas will emerge, new leaders will rise to take the place of the old, and new dreams will take shape, born from the lessons of the past. The legacy of the fallen empire will endure, not in the ruins of its cities or the dust of its temples, but in the minds and hearts of those who inherit its history, its stories, and its lessons. The rise and fall of empires is not just the story of the powerful or the mighty. It is the story of humanity itself, of our ability to dream, to build, to fall, and to rise again. It is the story of our endless pursuit of greatness, of our constant desire to leave our mark on the world, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The fall of an empire may mark the end of one chapter, but it is always the beginning of another, a new chapter in the story of human civilization. As the ruins of the once great empire lay scattered in the dust of history, it is easy to believe that all has been lost. The towering spires, the monuments of stone and marble that once represented the apex of human achievement, are now nothing more than fragments, scattered across the desert like forgotten dreams. The grand palaces, the bustling marketplaces, the vibrant cities, all have been reduced to shadowy echoes of their former glory. But in these ruins, in the silence of destruction, there lies a power that is often overlooked, the power of memory. For it is in the aftermath of an empire's fall that the true story of its rise and fall is told. Not by the victors or the conquerors, not by those who sought to erase its name from history, but by those who lived it, who breathed life into its streets and witnessed the slow unraveling of its great promises. The lessons learned from the empire's journey, both its triumphs and its failures, are passed down through generations, encoded in the very fabric of human experience. In the ruins of empire, there is a bittersweet truth. Empires may fall, but the ideas they birthed continue to live on. The great ideas that once shaped the course of civilizations, ideas of governance, of law, of commerce, of philosophy, endure long after the political structures that gave birth to them have crumbled. These ideas are immortal, living in the minds and hearts of those who remember, who learn, who grow from the ashes of the past. And so, as we stand amidst the rubble of what once was, we must remember that this is not the end. This is merely a moment of transition. From the fall of the empire, new seeds of innovation will sprout. The very weaknesses that led to its collapse will be studied, dissected, and understood, ensuring that future generations will not repeat the same mistakes. The empire's fall may have been tragic, but it will not be in vain. The lessons learned from its rise and its ultimate demise will form the foundation for the future. From the ashes of the past, new civilizations will rise, each one carrying with it the wisdom and the mistakes of the empire before it. The fall of one empire does not signal the end of history, but rather the continuation of the human story, a story of striving, of learning, and of evolving. The past, with all its grandeur and its tragedies, is a mirror in which we see ourselves, a guide that helps us chart the course of the future. As the world moves forward, we may look back at the great empires of history with awe and reverence, but we must also look forward with hope. Hope that we will build something better, something more enduring, and something that learns from the mistakes of those who came before. For in every empire's rise and fall, there is a lesson about the impermanence of power, the fragility of human ambition, and the potential for renewal. The story of empires is the story of humanity itself. It is the story of our dreams, our desires, our ambitions, and our ultimate reckoning with the consequences of those dreams. But it is also the story of our resilience, our capacity to rebuild, and our eternal drive to leave a legacy that will outlast us all. In the ruins of empires past, we find the seeds of future greatness, and from the fall of one civilization, we can rise to create something new, something greater, something that transcends the limitations of its predecessors. In the end, the fall of an empire is not a tragedy in the traditional sense. It is a natural part of the human experience, a moment in time when the arc of history bends and shifts, creating space for new ideas, new visions, and new possibilities. The empire may fall, but the story is far from over. The world continues to turn, and with each revolution, new possibilities emerge from the lessons of the past. Thus, We honor the memory of those who built great empires, and we learn from their successes and failures. We remember that empires, like everything else, are born and die, but the human spirit, the drive to create, to dream, and to build, lives on, ever forward, ever striving, ever reaching for something greater.